So the whole thing is, I would say, is you're buying that head start so you can basically run away. You're not learning to fight. You're learning to defend, protect, and escape. And that's the different mindset, because a martial artist, they're trained to fight, but you're not fighting a guy that has a weapon.
Right.
You know, the odds swing against you the longer you stay.
Just to let you know, because you should know. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Just to Let You Know. I'm really excited today to have John Duza. This is our speaker today, and he is a 30-year martial artist expert who teaches self-defense, not only to the normal person, but he also teaches to children and elderly people up to 90 years old. And he is remarkable in teaching you situational awareness and how to stay safe in this time that the world has gone crazy. So we're going to take his tips and trades and listen and see how he can teach us how to defend ourselves when we need it.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, you guys. Thank you for the opportunity and the invitation.
I'm really happy to have you here, and I've been watching your YouTube videos, and there's a lot I've learned about you in the last week. One of them is, and we'll get into it, you've been in movies. You know, you went on the tour. You had a couple of films. I saw you in Wardrobe. I think you dressed like a werewolf. Is that right? Something like that?
Yeah, I've done some creative projects in films. That one, yes, it's a film where I play a liking spiritual wolf.
Right, nice.
Thing. And the film's called The Knight and the Witch. So it's a medieval knight, and basically goes along the adventures of Lancelot, you know, so that's...
So you're getting into the artistic value, and Hollywood's going to discover you. I do think you're up and coming. I think you're going to do really well. I'd like to start by saying I started karate. My brother and I started karate when I was about 7.5, and Mark was 8.5. We had our black belt at 13, so we're really well-versed in martial arts. And the difference between me looking at a whole bunch of self-defense instructors is that you use a very practical means of how you teach people how to defend yourself in real-world situations, not me squaring off with another black belt and I know what kind of kicks he's going to throw and I know how to block his kicks. But this is the awareness you need to know when, let's say you're pumping gas and somebody approaches you, or a homeless person, nothing against homeless, but a person comes up to you maybe with a mental illness. How do you get out of that situation?
You know, people's misconceptions of what they say, like, oh, well, I'm going to learn some martial arts. I'm going to go to a school, and everybody is on UFC now, so they're like, oh, I'm going to go to an MMA gym, learn boxing, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, which are fantastic. That's great, and I teach those as well, and I train in those. But the reality is, and again, I've heard so many of these turning point crossroads, and I remember, you know, when I was in my prime, I thought I was like a badass, you know? And it wasn't until I went home to Boston to visit some friends, and we were out drinking, walking down the streets. I got mugged at gunpoint with 2 of my friends. And I realized I've spent all these years learning how to fight in martial arts, and I could do these fancy kicks and strikes and locks and things like that. It's completely different when you got a person with a gun in your face ready to shoot you. And I was like, I've never learned this. No one ever taught me this stuff. In martial arts, they don't teach gun tactics. And if most of them you see on YouTube, they do, but honestly, they're a joke. It's not the real stuff.
Right.
And that was like, okay, that crossroads, because I was basically begging for my life, and we all complied, and he took all of our money and left. And I was like, okay, I need a turning point in the knowledge that I learned. And so I started learning more of a military-style combat, hand-to-hand combat weapons training, to say, okay, in the real world, this is what it's like. It is not martial arts. And the biggest thing that I try to dispel a lot of myths, and I tell people, martial arts is a sport. It's a game. You learn some stuff that basically are centuries old. Nobody fights like that anymore. And honestly, I'm not ragging on it, because I have studied many styles of Kung Fu, Karate, Wing Chun, and Shaolin Kempo, and Aikido, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and all of that. But you spar, you're working strategy in a game and things like that, and that mindset is like, okay, I'm fighting, but it's play fighting. I'm going to hit, I'm going to dance around, get out of the pocket, go back in, hit, and things like that. And that's a fight. And defining words is, that's a fight. But on the street, on a criminal attack, it's an attack. It's not a fight. You're not sparring. There's no ref. There's no tapping out. It's not a controlled environment. You are fighting for your life. And what you do is going to decide if you live or die in those moments. And I always say you have to survive the first 30 seconds of an attack, because if you can't, that means you are getting injured. You're going to either fatally get, die, or you're going to wake up in a hospital and find out what the heck just happened to me. And the ferociousness of these attacks, it's not what you see where they walk up to you and say, oh, well, give me your money. And they just stand there, they're going to hit you fast and furious and you're on the ground and then they just take your stuff. And that's the thing that the general public doesn't know. And I had to explain that to people, and I made that shift because I grew up street fighting because I had to do. I got beat up,
Right.
so I had to learn how to fight on the streets, and it was a lot different. And I always have to say, with martial arts, you're brainwashed by rules, right? You can't gouge the eyes, you can't pull hair, you can't strike the groin,
Right.
you can't bite. And things like that, because you're brainwashed by these rules of competition or under the school's rules. But on the street, those are all of the tactics you need to do to survive. You're not fighting fair on the street. And so I always have to say, for me, going from tactical street into when I spar in the gyms and things like that, for me, it's easy. I just shut off a switch and say, okay, I can't do this, I can't do that. But on the other side, it doesn't work for a lot of the other people. There can be black belts and world champs and things like that in their sport. And then when they get into a street confrontation of an attack, they do what they've been trained to do. And so they don't have hand wraps and gloves, and they're going to punch bare knuckle, and they're going to break their hand. And I don't care if you're a world champ, you can still break your hand hitting a human skull. May not be the first punch, might be 20 punches in, but one of those are going to damage your hands. And I'm a perfect candidate because I broke both my pinky knuckles getting in street fights. And I know how to punch, but as a person moves, kind of just skims off, and then I shattered my hand. So the thing that I'm trying to pass on now is my knowledge is not training people to basically get in a fight and win that fight. And over the course of my years, I am constantly faced with ignorance and naiveness. Mm-hmm. And martial arts self-defense, I don't know why it's such a hard sell. Like when I talk to people and I'm like, hey, you should learn some self-defense, protect your family, do things. These are the dumb answers I get back. I live in a gated community. That'll never happen.
Never.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, I'll teach you how to,
I'm rich.
defend yourself, things like that. I don't get in bar fights. I have a dog. And I'm like, those are the dumbest answers I've ever heard. All right. I'm not teaching you to win a bar fight at all. Right. And living in a gated community is such a naive type of mindset, because I always tell people, poor people don't rob each other in the ghetto. They're going to go to the rich areas like in Rancho Santa Fe at Del Mar. They're going to go to the mega mansions. They know if they could break in there, they can basically win the lottery ticket by scoring all of the high-priced items that rich people have. You are the higher target. And if you don't know how to defend your well-being as well as your family, your wife, your kids, things like that, you are prey. And I always ask the simple question, do you want to be prey or do you want to be a predator? Do you want to be that wounded bunny rabbit walking along the African Serengeti and all the lions and hyenas want to eat you? But if you're a fellow predator, then they leave you alone. And that's the mindset that you need for real safety on the streets for today's world.
How did you first use your skills on the street? Was there a time where you were forced to use it and it actually worked? Because I remember doing karate for years. You always wonder if it works or not. Then all of a sudden you find yourself in a fight and it's almost muscle memory. Then you realize, oh, well, I guess it works. I won. But what happened to you? Was there a time where you actually, besides a fight, have you ever been approached, like attacked?
Oh, yeah. The going back in the childhood side, answering
Right.
that question, turning point was getting bullied, getting beat up in the gym locker room in junior high. And the pivotal moment was I learned to block. And it was great because instead of standing there and just getting hit, I learned the martial arts side of your blocks. So I was able to cover up and minimize my collateral damage of injuries. And then I fought back and did a couple of the tactics I learned and choked the kid out. And then I was like, great. And that bully from now on didn't
Left you alone.
Basically, it was awesome. It was. He became basically, you realize, the scared child himself. And bullies are just like a dog. They're just all bark, no bite. And until you stand up to them, you realize they have no skills. Maybe just intimidation of being bigger and things like that. But, you know, the mindset of someone that's a bully or a criminal or a gangbanger or anything like that with no moral compass, they're not going to go out of their way to join a martial arts school, an MMA gym, or anything like that to learn these safety self-defense tactics. Because if they did, through that level of training, they're going to start changing in their morals, beliefs, and ethics and say, okay, well, I shouldn't be doing this, you know, because martial arts, again, and you guys have trained, it's not about the physical. It's about the mental and the spiritual self as well that really builds within you to have better moral character. And that's what it did for me. And you realize, yeah, I don't want to be that guy that just wants to beat up people for the sake of beating up people.
Right.
You know, so
Teach you to discipline.
yeah, and that's what's really important. And I know a lot of people go through their martial arts, or they have their children go through the martial arts because of that exact thing. They want them to have some discipline, some ambition, some motivation, be a better person, rather than not having any type of that guidance, and they kind of grow up on the streets and they're kind of a bad apple now.
So let's say a female ask you asked a female, hey, listen, I think you should learn self-defense skills. And she says, yeah, I want to learn some. How do you start that student? And what do you first do? Like, what's your first thing? Do you talk to them? Do you go right into a situation? Or
Yeah, I've designed a lot of principles. Being in something for so long, as you guys know, in any craft or field, you start to see things in different ways to basically conceptualize different principles of basically now knowing how to work smarter, not harder. So when I train all clients, the biggest thing is getting down these certain principles that are just your fundamentals that you have to know. And it's crazy because I've trained all shapes and sizes of people, from the people that are out of shape and to the triathletes. And their balance and coordination is something that always lacks in everybody. And like I said, I've taken bodybuilders and people that are like, wow, they're in great shape. But then I start training them and they have 2 left feet. And then you watch them punch and you're like, oh my God. And another turning point was when I was teaching into the fight gyms, and I'd see these big, giant men. And I'd be teaching Muay Thai kickboxing classes and boxing. And I said, all right, everybody go, start punching on a bag, start warming up, things like that. And you just see the uncoordinated, these big men that could squish you, and you're afraid of these big guys, but then you see them punch and you're like, why was I afraid of big guys like that? Because you see the lack of coordination, that they're just punching ridiculous. And so I always tell people, don't fear the big guys, you know. Human beings, we're all designed the same. We all have the weak points, just like everybody else. The way I teach now is we don't attack muscle, you know. Basically, we're looking at weak points on the human body, and leverage will always beat muscular strength. Muscle doesn't grow at the joint. So when I teach joint manipulation, you can resist all you want. Laws of leverage are going to beat that strength. Muscle doesn't grow at the joints, connected by tendon. It's easily, you know, manipulated, and I can cause some real joint damage. Eventually, you can break joints and things like that. Our philosophy is, how much can we induce pain on an attacker to take the will of their fight out of them? Now, in competition, it's a little bit different because you got rounds and they get to rest. They got cornerman coach and things like that. But when a vicious person is attacking at you, you got to know strategically angles of evasion, angles of defense, and angles of offense. And, you know, like I'm always saying, okay, you want to be an instant black belt, someone attacks you, number one thing I say is jam your thumb and squish their eyeball. Because if that person is trying to sexually assault and abduct a woman and she'll never be seen again, you have to fight back. You're not going to punch. It's just like poking a lion with a stick. It's just going to piss him off, and he's going to hit her back even harder. But if you squish that eyeball with your thumb or fingers or things like that, his whole will is gone. Sex is the last thing on his mind. He's panicking like a drowning victim. His eyeball, blood's going everywhere. And he's thinking, I need to go to a hospital right now. And so that's a great survival tactic to do. As gross as it sounds, I know, but you know what? It is survival of the fittest. It has to be animalistic to survive. Your will of survival has to be greater than the attacker's will of trying to hurt you. And at that point, you got to ask yourself, do you want to live or die in that scenario?
Hey, John, I have a question. Do you teach this? So, and Frank and I, we've been in our share of street fights, probably more than a lot. So, I know that in some of the street fights that I was in, I knew the guy was going to try and hit me. So I hit him first.
Yeah.
So, but I think there's a fear factor with people when you see like a street fight coming up and like, what's up? What's up? What's up? Oh, I'm engaged in a confrontation. Do you teach at what point where it's okay for you to strike first, even though you may get arrested, but at least you're not the one in the hospital?
Yes. And that's also another myth. You know, they always say, well, you know, to be construed as self-defense, you have to let the person hit you first. And I say that's wrong. It's a myth. It's stupid. That one hit could give you a concussion. You black out. Now you're basically falling. You hit the concrete, and now that's fatal. That person might pull out a blade, now stab you. Like, you don't wait for that. Now, there are different rules of engagement that I teach that people need to basically do when they get in that confrontation. And again, you got to analyze, is this a road rage type of scenario, or is this a criminal attack where it's a home invasion, carjacking, you know, with weapons, multiple attackers with guns, you know, things like that? That is completely different. That's a criminal attack rather than a road rage. I'm mad, you cut me off, and now I just want to beat you up type of thing.
Right.
The thing that's universal, and law enforcement uses this as well, and basically, no matter where you are, any type of confrontation, and you've seen, I'm sure on YouTube, some videos and stuff, and like you had mentioned, like that street fight. Well, the guys, what do? You get basically an inch from each other, and you bump your chest out, and you're like talking smack to each other, and you're hyping each other's adrenaline dump, and you're like, oh, you know, profanity after profanity, and you're egging that person on. You get really close, and I say you never want to do that, because back east, when you do that, you get a headbutt right to the nose, you know. But at that point, and there's a lot of principles and catchphrases, and that's the thing that I would like to pass to the audience. And if they can just know these certain catchphrases, it makes them aware to not make these fatal mistakes. And the biggest thing is, like, you know, awareness buys you time. Time buys you options. And those options buys you survivability and escape. So if I'm aware and I am scanning a parking lot and I see a threat that might be like 30, 40 yards away, and they're coming at me with malicious intent, I have options now. I can say, okay, at that point, I can pull out my self-defense tool. I can just get out of that snare and run away. Or it preps me mentally prepared for battle. I'm like, okay, I can't escape. It's fight or flight. I'm going to have to fight now and go hands-on. But when you get this close to somebody, you don't have that space to give you that awareness that buys you the time to say, okay, he's reaching in his back pocket for something. When you're so close, you have no idea what's about to happen. Now, the thing with law enforcement uses, and I tell everybody needs to do this, is anytime you get in any type of conflict, there's a thing called what's called the kill zone. And that is the length of your leg plus 6 inches, all right? And now, the length of the leg plus 6 inches is a circle all around me. That is my private space. Now, the reason you have that distance is because if they kick, if they swing a weapon, if they punch, they're out of range. And you can see that, and you could take evasive action to evade or counterattack. Now, if a person comes into the length of that leg 6 inches kill zone around with verbal or physical intent to do bodily harm, then you are within your legal right to defend yourself. Now, if you know the person is a hostile person coming in to attack at you, and you give that fair warning, hey, back away, that's close enough, and they keep encroaching, and now they step into that kill zone and says, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kick your ass. That right there is verbal threat, and what follows is going to be the physical threat. Right then and there, you are within your right of the stand your ground law to defend yourself, because you don't want to wait till that person hits you, because again, that one hit now already puts you at that disadvantage of being injured. So I would say, if you went up to a law enforcement and you did that and you entered his kill zone, he's going to take you down. And that's something that you want to always keep in your head. Don't let anyone get that close to you.
Right.
You know? And now with that caveat are the wolf in sheep's clothing. And this is more for the women with the abductions. You could be pumping gas. You could be in a grocery store, a parking lot, and things like that. And a person might come up and be like, oh, excuse me, can you help me? I'm kind of lost. You know where the freeway is? You know, do you know what the time is? Things like that. Very harmless question, right? So the person is within that distance, and you're like, oh, yeah, you just go down this street, you're going to make a right, you're going to do here, and they'll start getting closer, closer. Oh, okay, so I'm just going to make a right down here, and they get close enough within arm's reach, and that's when they grab the woman. and now it's going for the abduction because you allowed that wolf in sheep's clothing to get close enough to grab onto you. And so I would say, keep that distance.
So what do you tell a guy like that? Hey, back off. You could talk to me from over there, but like, what do you teach the woman or the guy when someone's approaching you?
Well, I've had that because what they want to do is they'll say, hey, you know what time it is? Because they want you to look down and look at your watch, and then they can hit you. I said, what do I look like, Big Ben?
Yeah.
Buy a watch.
Right.
And I just keep staring at the guy.
Right.
And I'm
not cooperative.
No.
Yeah.
Even though I
Let
have
them
a
realize
watch,
you're an ass.
yeah, but then they know
Right. You know what's up.
that you have a little bit of street smart. They're like,
Right.
okay, this is a harder target, not a soft target.
Right.
That's the thing is, in martial arts, you're always focused. You're ready, right? You're ready to spar. You touch gloves. You're ready to go. On the attacks, they're looking for prey. And criminals' mindset, and I always say, to understand true self-defense, you really have to think like a criminal to know how they think. And they're looking for the most distracted person in that gas station, parking lot, or whatever, the over-trusting people. And that's why they attack, unfortunately, a lot of the seniors, the elderly, because they're just not as
My
always
mother-in-law,
aware.
she'd qualify for that.
Yeah.
She talks to everybody.
And it is really tragic, And so when they do encroach like that, you basically want to look directly at them. Don't be intimidated by them. And I would say you always want to step off at the 45-degree angle. So at least one of their sides are basically out of range. So if I stand directly in your center line, you can hit me with either hand, kick me with either leg, things like that. But if I take the 45-degree angle offset, like to your left, now your right hand is out of range to hit me. And, another catchphrase you always say is like, the eyes are the windows to the soul, right? Everybody's heard that, right? The hands are the windows to their intent. So you look at them, if their hands are here and they're harmless, but if their hands are reaching back here, well, what's that intent? Are they reaching for a weapon now, right? So you always want to be careful what their hands are doing. And if they encroach, and I teach a lot of security personnel staff training as well for a lot of nightclubs, bar industry, church groups. And I always say, you take that 45-degree angle off, they keep encroaching, say, hey, look, stop right there, there's no need for you to get any closer. If they ignore those commands and they keep coming, now you know something is up, right? You shouldn't be that naive to say, hey, this is weird now, something's happening. And then again, you have now that awareness that buys you that time. So now it's like, okay, now I have time to know my escape routes. If I have to run, where am I going to run to? And or pull out a weapon and now prepare for that self-defense. But the criminals don't want to engage in a real fight. They don't know how to fight. They don't go to gyms to fight. They use bluffing tools. So that gun and knife is a bluffing tool. Now, some of those criminals will engage and actually shoot you. Some of them won't. And a lot of times I read so many of these news articles, they have a gun, carjacking, things like that. It's a toy gun, But you don't know that. And so you are still within your right to use lethal force against that because in your mind, you don't know that's a real gun. It looks real. You don't know it's a fake knife. It's real. So same thing with law enforcement. They're going to pull out that toy gun. Cops are going to shoot them. So
What about non-lethal weapons that you would suggest that people carry who are either super uncomfortable to carry a firearm or can't see themselves really pulling a trigger, but they're more apt to use something that's called lethal? What do you recommend?
Yeah, non-lethal tools. Exactly. I always suggest for anyone just to have these foundations. And I'll even show you my keychain. And I recommend all people carry this, especially with women. In my self-defense for women, basically I give a free pepper gel keychain. Now, pepper gel, pepper spray is a great deterrent because it will shoot 12 feet away. Their face is getting the hot sauce. They will be on fire for over an hour. Their eyes water. It gets in. They're going to be having snot coming out of them uncontrollably. They can't breathe. They're gagging. They're coughing. Their skin's on fire. They're burning. Again, it puts them into a panic mode, like a drowning victim. It's affecting the psychology of that person. So that's the thing I would say, affect a person's psychology and physiology, not like, hitting them for the sake of hitting them per se. So it's nice because I get distance. They are going to be running away from me. They're not going to want to stay engaged when their face is on fire. And immediately everyone's going to want to retreat to find water, find something to get this burning gel off their face.
I've heard of spray, but what's a gel?
So I recommend the spray gel, pepper gel instead, because when you look at pepper spray, it's an aerosol, right? Kind of like if you were to spray hairspray, right? So if you're outside and you're spraying that, you have wind blowback. If the wind blows that, it's going to affect you as well. If you are in a house, a room, a car, an elevator, a stairway, and you're using pepper spray against an attacker,
It's going to get on you.
It's going to aerosol, and you're going to feel it. You're going to start gagging, coughing, can't breathe, your eyes, everything's on fire. The gel is more like shaving gel. It basically squirts out as a gel, it hits you, and then it starts foaming and sticks to you, and you don't have the wind blowback. So that's kind of more of a newer technology with that self-defense product, and everybody's using more of the gel, which is what I recommend instead.
So, John, this is where I'm coming forward with my previous question. All right, so you're a female, you're standing at a gas pump. This guy walks up to you. He starts asking you some questions. Hey, get back. And he's like, what? And he's like, you better get back. And you gel him. So and the guy really just wanted to know what time it was. Yeah. He's like,
I really want to know where the freeway is, man.
You just maced me. I didn't want.
My nose is running.
But this is how do you teach a person to have the guts to just unload, just go, hey, that's it. If I make a mistake, oh well, but I warned the guy, get out of my bubble. How do you teach that to be the offensive person versus maybe he is really asking me the time? How do you teach that to a person?
Training is everything. And, with that question and a lot of questions that people ask me, and I always say that's the what-if game. Well, if I did this, what if he did this? Well, he could just hit you with the other hit. He could do this, these what-if games. When you have that training and that knowledge, there is no more what-ifs. You know how to handle every scenario. Now, the woman that's at that gas station and the guy goes, well, you're giving him those preemptive signs, the warning that obviously, one, by backing up with distance, using that, everyone's used that verbal judo, right? That verbal kung fu. And what that really is now elevating your voice to tell that person to back away, get away from me, Now, ideally, they would say, oh, excuse me, miss, do you know what the time is? You keep that distance, and if you want to give them the time, great, but don't look down. If I'm going to pull up my phone, I keep my eyes locked on that person. I bring the phone up to my eyes to see the time, let's say, right? Or if it's directions, I'm looking them in the eye. I'm not going to turn my head and be like, oh, yeah, you just go down this street and you're going to make it right. Now, as soon as you did that, and all of a sudden you reface him again, he's basically 3, 4, 5 steps closer to you now, and now he can grab you. So they're using these scams or these games to get close enough to you to grab you very quickly so that way there's no other witnesses. Going back to that question, well, you're giving him these warnings, and if he basically doesn't comply with at least those 2 warnings, say, look, back away, you're making me uncomfortable, things like that, and you're elevating that voice, you pull out that pep spray, say, look, stop or I'm going to blast you. Now, at that point, if he was just a regular person who was harmless, he should know, okay, sorry, I didn't mean to spook you or anything like that. And if he keeps coming, now yes.
Unload
on him. It's time to do that because he's not listening. Whether he's on drugs or off his meds, or he's just someone that just, basically wants to do that harm to you, they're targeting you. At that point, you have to have the will to defend your life and well-being. And that's the biggest preach that I try to tell everybody. And it makes me so mad because it should not be a hard sell. And I don't understand why people still, till this day, even on my social media, I got trolls just acting stupid, saying the dumbest things, thinking they're the master expert when they're sitting in mom's basement and they never trained a day in their life. You have to train, and through that training, it's not only going to get you in a better physical self, it's going to strengthen that mental and spiritual mindset to have the will to protect yourself. And it's the military is a perfect example when you see them going into boot camp. Why? They're taking average people to convert them into having this. And the biggest thing I always say is you can rely on weapons, but the caveat is you have to know how to use that weapon, and you have to know weapon retention. Now, if you don't know how to hold on to that weapon, most homeowners get shot by their own firearm because they don't have the will to shoot that intruder. And the criminal sees that and he just snatches the gun from them or snatches the knife from them. And so you can do all this training, but if you don't have the will, again, you're going to fail that test. And unfortunately, that's a very, very life-threatening test that you're going to fail.
Talk about life threatening. I'm going to take it a different direction. Mark and I are both California real estate brokers. We sell houses. We do open houses. We know a little bit more than the average realtor, I think, about being safe. What tips would you give realtors? And I'm just going to, it could be either female or male, but I'm just going to say female. A female is going to do an open house in an area that she's not sure of because she wants to go and try to get contacts and meet people. What advice would you give them as far as whatever situational awareness or what you need to know to be safe as a realtor in California?
Oh, sure.
Or anywhere, any state.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And a little disclaimer, too. I was a licensed realtor and a senior mortgage officer for over 10 years. I was really good in the game, and I loved it. It was great, and I've had some great times in that. And back in the day was different times than I'm sure what there is now on how realtors handle open houses. But back in the day, yeah, you get a woman who's sitting in a house by herself, and I've done open houses too. And
today's the same.
It's the same.
You put your signs out, you bake some cookies, things like that, and you get that door wide open, and anybody could come in. Now, in the realtor's mindset, anybody that walks in is a lead. You're like, oh yes, I got a lead, right? It could be a potential buyer,
right?
But on the other flip side, you have no idea. And I always tell people, you can Google and you will be astounded on the criminal attacks on realtors, whether that be sexual assaults, deaths, and all kinds of brutal attacks that I've read myself when I was doing these. I've done real estate self-defense workshops back in the day as well. I'd go to the broker houses and say, look, I can train your agents to stay safer because you want to minimize liability. Right. So with the woman being there by herself, you have to be really careful. So again, the situational awareness, I would say use and trust your women's intuition or anybody. You get that sixth sense. All of a sudden this guy comes in, he's kind of acting a little weird. Body language is a big thing. So you got to understand how to read someone's body language. Someone that walks in the door, they're friendly, they're chill. Okay, cool. But they kind of, if that other person came in and kind of gave you a weird vibe, trust that vibe. A lot of people ignore it, right? And your body's telling you something for a reason, and people don't listen to that. So when you're in that house, again, a realtor should keep that distance, right? Again, shake the hands, but then kind of retreat, give that space. And COVID was nice because everyone's now that 6-foot rule,
right.
And then talk to that person. If they're saying, okay, well, let me show you the house. And what I used to do, and it's something you may catch some agents doing it, and they would lead.
Yeah.
Right? They're walking in front to show the bedroom, the garage, things like that. But an attacker could then now grab you because you don't see them. You're basically blind. So I would always let the client walk first. I'll say, all right, well, let's go up the stairs or let's go check out the master bedroom, and I would guide them to lead. That's what you want to do. The other thing, too, is if you're a female realtor, you really want to work the buddy system and ideally have that second agent there.
Right.
And, if you have a lot of foot traffic coming in to look at that open listing, you'd want that anyway. So as I'm taking a customer and giving that tour, what if someone else comes in now and they don't see that? So it's nice to have that secondary agent to have them sign that logbook and then also kind of get a little rapport with them and talk to them and things like that. I think all realtors should still have also some pepper gel. And again, pepper gel is non-lethal. And I would say if you're going to have something like I say on your keychain, and I can show you mine as well.
Get that keychain out.
Yeah.
As you're talking, because you keep mentioning the keychain. I'm interested.
Oh, sure,
If you don't mind,
well, let's
you
reach.
can take that off.
We'll find out.
Yeah, we want to see this keychain.
Oh.
We like toys and.
So it's a very simple thing, but I always will have my keys, right?
All right.
And
let's
so
see what you got there.
I got my 3-in-1 pepper gel, which is pepper gel, CS tear gas, and a UV marking dye, so cops
Really?
can find
Is
them.
CS on there?
So this, and then I got this small little knife on here that, honestly, I just got on Amazon, and it's a necklace knife. Normally it would be a chain. It's under here, under my jacket, shirt, whatever. But I have non-lethal to spray someone. But let's say it didn't work. Let's say there's multiple attackers. Let's say you missed spraying them in the eyes, and now they're still coming at you, and this will shoot 12 feet away for about 20 seconds. But now this is empty. Now you got nothing. Right? So then now this right here, I just use my thumb and I could pop out this little blade. It's razor sharp. Right? It's just a couple inches, totally legal, but it's razor sharp that I can now have lethal force. Right. And again, you're looking for the vulnerabilities to take someone down.
Let me see that blade.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm gonna First of all, I'm going to come out and
Shoot
go.
it in my face and see what happens.
Back off. Stay away from the cookies. Okay, that doesn't work. I'm spraying the guy's jumping over, and then I'm take my thumb and I got this.
Oh,
Yes.
Now this is unique, and I want people to know because I love knives. I think they're beautiful tools. But that right there is long enough to go through a sternum and hit your heart.
is it really?
Yeah, easily. This can go through. That's all it takes. That your heart is right against that chest plate right here.
Yeah.
It's not far. It's not deep in. This will get it. Plus, any arteries, right?
That'll slice
I mean,
it.
can you imagine that?
No,
Can you imagine this whole thing in your neck?
it's scaring
No,
me
so
right
even
now.
though it looks like a small knife, it's lethal.
It's still lethal.
It's really lethal.
Let me see it.
And if you know how to use it, you know where the femoral arteries, you know where the
Yes.
brachial arteries.
This
you
is
know
what
the
I want to
jugular
ask
vein.
John. Okay, so John, now you have this knife,
Yes.
but you want to make sure the other guy doesn't have the knife. So you called it weapon retention.
Yes.
How do you teach somebody that weapon retention? There you go.
So there's many tactics for the weapon retention. It's just basically knowing how to basically cover up. And let's say, if I needed to, what my choice is you don't want to go for superficial wounds against someone that's trying to kill you, right? So what I mean by that is I'm not just stabbing their stomach, I'm not just slicing their arm type of thing. If my life was truly in jeopardy, and I know this is 100% justifiable use of force under the laws, I'm going to just stab this and puncture the jugular or the carotid artery. They're going to bleed out in a matter of seconds. They're instantly going to lose consciousness, and they're going to bleed out. And that is your checkmate. That is your fatal shot.
And your attention is going to be, their attention is going to go right back to their survival.
Yes. And
And
again,
it gives you a chance to run away as well.
and I actually have real footage of surveillance videos of how fast in CCTV that basically you can have loss of life. And basically there was a video on my phone I can show after. These four guys are talking smack to these other four guys, and this one guy has a knife, and his other buddy, the other opposing team, guy just walks, no hands up, just walks like he's just walking towards this guy with the knife, and he just pushes that right into him, punctures the carotid artery, blood goes flying out. Less than 10 seconds, he falls on the ground, dies.
This
right
is
there.
true?
It's totally true. I have so many real death videos that I use to show my clients as a kind of a reality slap because a lot of people are in denial. And that type of denial can get you killed when you don't know the ways of how the world really is. You're kind of sheltered in this bubble. And I always say, God forbid, hopefully you live your whole life and nothing ever happens to you. But it's the one time something would happen, why would you risk your life? And the other thing is, why would you orphan your children and your spouse by not taking some simple initiative to just protect you and your family? It's honestly not hard.
You don't even have to work out. It's not like you're running up hills and doing push-ups. This is just how to use a weapon.
But you got to
Anyone can
practice,
use
though. You have to train.
You got to practice.
You have to train. And the knife tactics.
Redundancy.
I forgot to answer your question. On the retention side, there's several tactics that I teach for the weapon retention. Retaining a firearm, if someone's trying to grab that, and I teach that for law enforcement and security personnel as well. Grabbing the knife, they're going to try to grab, the hand. And really, it's just so many things. I mean, thumb in the eye to distract them and freeze that hand. But even simply, though, if you have the hand right here and they grab, all I do is I just roll my wrist and I'm going to slice their own hand. Now, if you ever gotten a paper cut, you know that even hurts, right? So imagine if I had a blade and I just roll and I just slice your hand. Now, again, affecting the psychology and physiology of what the human body does. Anybody that's ever had a paper cut themselves cutting vegetables in the kitchen, burn themselves, what is the thing that your body does?
Just pull back.
Right?
Yeah.
You're not telling your body. It does it
Focuses on the injury.
subconsciously, right? Now, the thing is, I'm out here and I touch something and whatever, instantly they're going to go, ow, and they're going to bring it to their body, and the other hand is going to cover the injury.
Yeah, they pull back.
Right? They didn't tell themselves to do it, just your mind, body does it naturally. Now, both hands are off the victim. I'm like, ow, and then they look at the wound and they're like, oh my God, that really hurt, right? They have to do that assessment. We've all done it ourselves. You cut yourself in the kitchen, you do the same thing.
How bad is
then
it?
you assess it and you see the blood, you're like, oh. And then you're like, oh my God, that one went deep.
Yeah.
And you get the first aid kit and whatnot. But and it's so easy on the retention, way easier than you think. And that's the thing with the modified teachings that I do is because when you look at the mindset of the martial arts schools, going through the belt system, you got to be physically fit. You're getting that kick-ass workout, and you're going all through this. And you have to have this, that people have this image like, oh, a UFC fighter, he's ripped, he's big, he's strong, and I have to be like that. But the tactics I did is like, what can I do that people can do right now? You don't have to be young, you don't have to be fit, it's anybody can do these things. And the philosophy that I have now of how my mind has changed is when you go on YouTube and you see all these people teaching these tactics, martial arts masters and MMA guys, and right, they're big, muscly, strong, demonstrating the technique on another muscly, strong guy, right? And I've seen some of the dumbest, inefficient, dumbest ways to get out of a rear naked choke or a bear hug or anything like that. And I'm like, why the hell would you do that? And then on the other flip side, they're like, oh, well, he's got me in this bear hug. I'm going to step my leg right here. I'm going to reach down. I'm going to bend and pick up both his legs and lift him in the air and slam him. Now, two strong guys demonstrating a move on YouTube, yeah, great, okay? My beef with that is, how does a woman, child, or senior citizen going to be able to do that technique? They can't, right? Because of the disadvantages they're already faced with. Again, a child, right? Or a senior. So if they can't do it, that technique is useless. 100% useless because they can't execute that move, right? And that's the problem with a lot of the MMA moves is, again, it's a sport and they're doing these things and they're big and strong. So a lot of the tactics that I had to redesign, and my philosophy is, if a woman, child, senior citizen can't do it, I'm not doing that tactic. It's useless. I'm throwing it out the window. How can I design tactics so that way they can do it? Because they're the ones that truly need it in the real world to basically fight off this strong, multiple attacker, big guys with weapons. And again, you got this elderly woman, grandma. She's not going to be able to do the techniques that people are teaching on YouTube.
Right.
You brought up something really important, that when you were going through school, starting in elementary school, you were picked on constantly.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Irish, the black, the other Asians, whoever. Name your ethnicity, they were picking on you. And I just heard about this kid. He was in that same situation. But now, because he did not know how to defend himself, he went and got his dad's shotgun, and he went and shot up the school. So maybe if you had this for those kids who are getting picked on, who are being abused by their fellow classmates, if you taught them, then they would be less likely to say, oh, I can't defend myself, I have to have retribution. Because that just seems like it's a recurring theme. A kid gets picked on, he's tired of it, he's 15, 16, he's like, hey, this is bullshit, I'm done getting picked on.
Comes back with a gun.
Yeah. And that's becoming more and more prevalent in the U.S. And you're seeing that. And that's why people, they need to take this seriously with the bully syndrome in schools. And basically schools just take it like a slap on the wrist. Oh, kids will be kids. And you try to talk to the bully's parents and they're in denial, or they get, like whatever, you're overreacting type of thing. And they sweep it under the rug. And I can tell you from true experience, with the years and years and years of getting beat up physically and mentally, racially discriminated and picked on to the point where, again, you're just crying your eyes out. Yeah. And I held a lot of rage. I mean, there was some evil rage in me. And it took basically my whole adulthood. Yeah. And I was able to put the dragon to sleep because I had some really violent anger in me. And I would fantasize about violent anger, doing really demented violence towards people, my bullies and things like that. And I was like, that's not a good way to think, So it took a lot of my own self-therapy. That's one thing I was able to do for myself to heal a lot of that trauma type of thing. But, going back to the bully thing, when I was getting picked on, I was either, basically just crying and running home and kind of kept that bottled in. But that was back then. Now what I'm seeing, and that short film that was made about me, and I addressed that too, is now kids today, this was pre-internet. Now with the internet, there's online bullying and physical bullying, and that now turns into the kid getting so mad that he is going to get a gun. He's going to go into a school and shoot everybody for retribution and to try to be that martyr of being famous of shooting up a school, or even on the other side of tragedy, they commit suicide.
Yeah.
And so in the film that we were talking about, the high number of suicides within children because they're getting picked on. And I was actually going to make a video about this as well. So I started digging and looking at the statistics and news articles and things like that. Oh my God, I couldn't even keep up. I was taking all these examples. Next thing I know, I got like 20, 30 cases of anywhere from 5 years old all the way to 11-year-old children killing themselves. And super, super tragic on how they felt the need that, all right, I'm just going to kill myself. And at that age, how as a child do you know how to kill yourself at that age?
Right.
That death should not even be in a child's mindset like that, And I read these horrific stories like this 9-year-old girl, she was getting picked on. Her mom went to the store. She barely got out of the driveway, and the little girl hung herself. And the other sister saw that and came in, And there was another boy I read, 9 years old, baseball phenomenon. He was really into baseball and stuff like that. But, basically went and got his hair cut. They kind of cut it wrong. Kids teased him on that. They teased him on his sneakers, even though he had Nike Air Jordans. Like, how could you pick on someone for that?
Right.
And he told his dad, I don't want to wear these sneakers anymore, and you got to cut my hair and fix it because the kids are. And the dad's like, your hair's fine, you're fine, and blah, blah. And then same thing, he basically hung himself in his room. There's tons of stories like this on the internet.
Sad.
And you'll bawl your eyes out reading this because children shouldn't be at that point of doing that, of no return. And then the trauma that it causes the parents. And it's like, well, it was my fault. I should have did something, And then it's the school's fault because they should have done something, But unfortunately, everyone's got their hands tied with stupid bureaucracy in like the school districts. They slap it on the wrist, and the parents, they're like, oh, kids, and they don't realize how damaging it really is to the child. Everyone's like, oh, they're just being bullied. It's no big deal. You can't sweep that type of trauma under the rug anymore because it does have that cause and effect. And the effect is it's either going to be a school shooting or that kid's going to commit suicide. Neither way, it's lose-lose, right, for everybody involved. And then you have to get that child at a right time to show them, say, look, let's turn this around. Let's teach you some other things. Let's get you confident and get empowered. And that's what martial arts really helped me because it wasn't me learning how to fight someone. I don't want to fight anybody. Even still at my age, knowing what I know, I don't want to hurt anybody. If I'm forced to do so, I will do so to protect me and my loved ones and things like that. But, through the martial arts system of the schools and things like that, well, again, it helped build confidence and empowerment. And a lot of the people I've trained, that's what I'm really trying to build, especially with women's self-defense, is if you have the training to get the skills, you become confident to basically carry yourself and have the skills to defend yourself. And through that, empowers you. So that way, you're not going to live in fear and basically not risk getting injured at the whim of anybody that can easily just walk up to you and take your safety.
You're like the Ronald Reagan of martial arts. You're peace through strength.
Yeah, that is true. And that's the way it should be.
And what about the switching gears from the kids to the females? What about the elderly? Let's say you have a person that uses a walker or is confined to a wheelchair but still is mobile. What kind of skills can you teach them to actually defend themselves? Is that possible?
Yes, everything is definitely possible. I've taught many adaptive self-defense workshops for people that are in the walkers and wheelchairs. I've taught cane self-defense, which the cane is a great weapon once you learn how to do that. With people with disabilities, they're already fighting that uphill battle. And so, yes, there are a lot of things that I can teach on the physical side, just like escape grappling and joint manipulation and things like that, and striking. Even if they're sitting down in the wheelchair, they can still defend and strike someone grabbing onto them. And then even more so, teaching them the use of self-defense tools. So whether it be that pepper spray or a knife or a firearm. The only thing that, and a lot of people say, well, just get a gun and problem solved. Just do that.
Yeah.
And they think They don't want to do the work to learn some other skills. They just want the easy route, so they're going to buy a gun.
Okay, so we're back to talking about the seniors. I'm in a wheelchair. I don't have that many skills. I may consider a firearm because I don't have that many options. What advice can you give to seniors?
I would recommend that still there's plenty of courses and classes and instructors out there that can teach people with disabilities, regardless of the disability, can still work within their means to teach the situational awareness tactics as well as surveillance skills and some other preemptive things for car defense, home defense, personal safety. And then if it had to go hands-on, we say, okay, well, what are the tools that they are already using? And again, if they're using a cane, that's a great weapon. And I just taught a senior workshop in Arizona. I just got back, and the guy had a cane. I show him, like, well, this is great because I teach Filipino scream, stick, and knife fighting. And, you got that cane. It's just basically the same thing as screwing that as scream, stick, swing that like a baseball bat or samurai sword, playing tennis, forehand, backhand. You're just swinging that stick, but also using it to stab into the vulnerable areas like the neck, the soft areas, the eyes, things like that. And most canes will have that hand thing with the hook. And you can use that to hook the head, hook the leg, go for, type takedowns. They have canes that have hidden knives and swords in them. I'm sure you've seen. I recommend if you are going to use a cane for defense, get more like a metal cane, not a wooden cane because it may break. People that are in wheelchairs and have trained certain people with wheelchairs, and it was great because we show them how to hide weapons within their chair. And so that way the bad guy doesn't see that. And it just disguised all part of the hand rest and things like that. They'd have like all kinds of makeshift knives and things like that. And it's unfortunate because, again, criminals have no shame, no moral compass. They are going to look at the easy prey, and that's going to be people with disabilities. And again, if it's a female, really hide that purse. Don't have it over that shoulder thing. Maybe put it behind here in the wheelchair if need be. I always tell people, if you can, maybe put it cross-body. But just be aware if they grab that, you are going to fall down and be dragged. You're going to have to slide your arm out of that. At that point, just let them take the purse. A walker, at least they have that. But again, they can use that as a barrier shield.
Right.
And I tell people, anything that is around you, anything you could pick up or anything that you're using can be a makeshift weapon, either as a striking tool, a blocking tool, or a projectile weapon where I can throw it. So someone breaks in, even grabbing a remote control, I can use that to shield against a blade, and I can throw that at them to buy time to run in the kitchen, maybe grab some knives or wherever I got my firearm or things like that. And you want to have what's called layered defense. And so whether it be on you or in your home and things like that, the more barriers you have, the more it slows the bad guy down. And when I do like a lot of active shooter scenarios and with schools and things like that, how to barricade a door, and I always say, look, you're doing these things to have a barrier and really to buy time to escape. Now, if you hit somebody and you only buy 5-10 seconds, like say you didn't know anything, you kick him in the shin and then you turn and run. Basically, you bought 5 seconds. He's going to recover, catch you in 3 strides, But let's say you strike the eyes, you chop the throat, things like that. Now you bought yourself 30 seconds. Right. 30 seconds, if you knew your life was in jeopardy, you could run a football field. Right. And escape, And in homes, the more barriers of doors or in schools, things like that, it slows that person down. And the reason being is you got to buy enough time so everyone can escape out of the building. And I'll tell people like, look, I bought that extra 10 seconds by barricading this door so I can ensure that last child got out of the building or that last person. Otherwise, you didn't, and the shooter came in, and now collateral damage. And you get those victims. So the whole thing is, I would say, is you're buying that head start so you can basically run away. You're not learning to fight. You're learning to defend, protect, and escape. And that's the different mindset because a martial artist, they're trained to fight, but you're not fighting a guy that has a weapon. Right. The odds swing against you the longer you stay engaged. And that's what people don't know. And the physicality aspect. And I talk to a lot of people, they don't realize going so hard to fight this aggression, this person, they're dead tired in 20, 30 seconds.
Right.
And I've trained like athletes that, they can run 10 miles. And I'll do a 2-minute round where they have to fight me. They're dead tired in 30 seconds. And they're like, oh, my God, I can't go anymore. They're going to want to throw up. Right. Their lactic acid builds up. Their hands are down. Their head's wide open. They're just like, all right, I'm done. But on the real world, you can't do that. You can't tell the attacker, I'm done, stop. He's just going to keep coming at you. And I always tell, whether it be competitive fighters or in the real world, you beat yourself when you don't have the cardiovascular or muscular endurance to persevere. If that lactic acid builds up after 10 seconds, it's because you didn't train physically to get past that. Or your cardio is only 20 seconds, and you're exhausted now. So I always tell people, you don't have to run 20 miles. Just know that you can run at least 100 yards. And for two reasons. I have to maybe run that football field to escape someone chasing me. And if I can get that head start, then eventually after a football field, he's going to get tired himself and back off. Mm-hmm. The other reason is you may have to chase someone down. What if you're walking down the street and some guy just grabs your child and takes off running? Mm-hmm. You have to now run to chase him. If you have no endurance to do that, what are you going to do? Just, oh my God, I'm so tired, I got to stop. And you're just watching this bad guy take your kid. So at least have that endurance to run that football field to catch someone if they basically took something of yours, like mainly a child.
Let's talk about that a little bit. We have, as you can see, we have a studio audience, and one of the people in the studio audience had a good question. She has kids, mm-hmm. and we're seeing a lot of child abductions. We're hearing a lot about that. If you look at all the border problems we're having with, sex trafficking, child abductions, it's getting really crazy. What, as a mom, should you be aware of when you have your two kids, even at a park or in a mall? What would you tell a woman like that? How would you speak on that?
The biggest thing is, because children can't protect themselves, it has to be the obligation of the parent to protect themselves as well as their children. That's where situational awareness is really important. Again, how far I can spot that potential threat. If you're on a playground and all of a sudden you see this weird, sketchy dude in a hooded sweatshirt wearing black, doesn't have a child, no place of business to be on that playground, he's inching a little closer, or public restrooms, very sketchy. Never, ever let your child go to a public restroom by themselves. As a parent, you should go into that restroom, check under, and open the door of every stall. Make sure that there's no guy in there hiding, creeping with a phone, trying to take a video of basically a child in there, right? So whether they are video voyeurs or they're looking for the sexual assault in that public restroom. And I just did another recent video warning women with their children about basically exactly that, the public restrooms, and I've shown surveillance videos of guys doing things like that, news articles. And so you look at all that stuff, and it has to be a new way of life. And a lot of people on my channel will say, well, we shouldn't have to do this. And instead of teaching women, that we need to take the initiative to learn self-defense, carry weapons, protect our well-being, well, you should just make videos telling men not to rape. That's the comment I get with a lot of women. And I write back and I say, look, I understand where you're coming from. I sympathize. A class is not going to convert a man to not rape. It's a deviant behavior to not carjack, not hurt
Who's going to sign up to that class?
Right? The class won't do that.
Hey, I feel like carjacking today. What should I do?
Sign up for the class.
Okay.
Yeah. And that'll be gone, right? It's a magic pill, and look at prison. Prison reform, they're going in jail for their crimes, and that doesn't reform. As soon as they get out, the majority of them go right back to the crime.
Right.
And it becomes more of that lifelong felon, deviant behavior, right. and they're going to do that. So it's really hard. Yes, I could make a lot of videos on my channel to say, hey, men, we really need to treat women with respect, not do these types of things and like that. But at the end of the day, I say these certain catchphrases as well. Only you can protect you. No one else can protect you. Law enforcement can, but what can a criminal do to you in 20 to 30 minutes before the cops come? Well, they can do a lot to you before the cops come. So you have to protect you. Maybe a good Samaritan, but nowadays there are no more good Samaritans because you see all these incidents on the news. People are more engaged with pulling their phone out, and they're like, oh, I'm just going to film this for TikTok, and no one's calling 911 to help this poor woman get assaulted, and they'd rather film that, right?
So
now,
sad.
With the children of that, the woman, the mom or the dad with their kids, they have to have enhanced situational awareness. They have to be the human weapon to know physical skills, because if some child predator grabbed their kid, well, they're going to have to fight that attacker to get their child back. And they're going to have to be proficient in using self-defense tools, because as soon as you use a self-defense tool, and I always joke about this, you're an instant black belt. you are what's called a force multiplier. If I don't have anything, right, I could be easily overtaken by multiple attackers.
Right.
But as soon as I could pick up that knife or a firearm or a stick or a rock or something, I'm a force multiplier because I have something that can cause greater damage. And I can also fight multiple attackers with that self-defense tool. So it's the obligation of the parent, one, to know how to protect their children. Also, kids at an early age are still very smart. They know how to do iPads and iPhones and do all this technology and things like that. You should teach your child right out of the gate, stranger danger, right? Don't let a child come up to you, know how to call 911 so that kid knows that. And predators will say, oh, do you want to look at my puppy? And kids will be like, yeah. Or do you want some ice cream? Yeah. You got to tell your children, unfortunately, it's come to a point in our world, you can't trust anybody. And children need to have that higher guard until they are vetted into the circle of trust. Mm-hmm. You as a parent circle that trust. You don't just let anybody into that, right? And so the children at any age, they need to learn some self-defense too. Now, that'll help dispel the bully syndrome, empower them, but then also know the stranger danger for abduction. So when I teach children, I've taught kids as young as 4 years old. I've made videos with some of my clients' children, and some of them went viral on my social media. I do have some others that I didn't put because they were just a young age, but they knew nothing. And I made this one video. She's like basically 8 years old. I got her doing all kinds of escape grappling, hand striking. She can kick. She can use an eskrima stick and swing. They're doing gun disarms. And even at children, I'm teaching them gun disarms because they still need to know that. That type of knowledge should not be held back and staggered. It's easy for them to know gun disarmament.
That's like your instructor making you wait 3 years before you learn how to deal with a gun. It's
right.
Like, teach them now.
Teach them now so they know it, and they learn very quickly, and they love it. It's empowered. These kids my kid clients are very, very awesome. They're so empowered. You wouldn't mess with them at all. That little 8-year-old girl has some of the best rear naked chokes even adults can't do to me. I can take the adult choke. This little girl will choke me out, and I'm gagging, tears in my eyes. She's a little girl, and I showed her how to do it right, But, with getting back with the, the victims of basically child abductions and things like that, and it's really tragic. And, again, look out for the wolf in sheep's clothing because it is someone that may be in that circle of trust. And they now become the person that would victimize that child, either sexually or abduct them or things like that because they gain the trust.
You want to hear a sad commentary on how we as a country eroded over the last 50 years? So when we were kids, you go to the store now and you're going to take your kids with you. And you put them in that shopping basket. It kind of looks like a little train, and they sit in it, and it's really long, and you're bumping into people. But when we were kids, my dad would just lock us in the car. Mm-hmm. And he'd just leave us in the parking lot. He goes, I'm going to the store. And he's smoking a Camel unfiltered cigarette. All right, staying here until I get back. We're like, I don't know how long. And then we're like dogs sitting in there. Is he back? Where is he? I don't see him. Fighting, wrestling. They would just leave us in a car.
Oh, yeah.
Because there was no fear of that. And then we would play in the canyons.
Oh, yeah.
You would have to be crazy to let your kid go into a canyon and just run around at 8 or 9 or 10 years old, riding our bikes, catching snakes.
Oh, yeah.
So we've seen the deterioration of our moral fabric here in the United States. And I believe a lot of that has to do with a weak criminal justice system.
Of course.
Because these guys who used to be the sexual predators, the rapists, when they were put into prison, they were in with the general population.
Oh, yes.
And they just took care of them.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of them didn't make it out. Now they're segregated. They have their own little special cells, their own little section, and they leave them in there. And then, like you said, you can't teach somebody not to be a rapist or a pedophile. They're just sick.
I think I would say that this has been going on forever, but because of media and because of video, we're seeing it more. But I think there's all those weirdos out there. We just never heard about it because.
Well, I don't think it was as prevalent.
But I do believe the criminal justice
prevalent
system
is
are prevalent. I do think the criminal justice system is just a joke.
Oh, yeah.
They're letting people out. They're saying that like a real deviant child molester, been convicted 2 or 3 times, and they're still wanting to put them out in the general public and figure out what neighborhood to put them in, and going to usually neighborhoods that aren't going to really notice, and put them in the desert or put them in the mountains. Why would you let them leave?
They shouldn't.
They should.
Unfortunately,
I mean, they already know that they're going to do it again.
yeah. And we have catch and release laws and no
They're a
bail.
joke.
And
Yeah.
the dumbest laws
Yeah.
that protect the criminals and unfortunately punish the law-abiding citizens more so.
The
Right,
reason why I
exactly.
say that is that today more than ever, you have to do your technique. Like you can no
Right,
longer
right.
trust that you're going to be protected by the police or by a security guard, or
By
you got
anybody.
you got to take care of yourself. Like, hey, and if you don't, you will at one point be that victim.
Yeah.
Yeah, your skills right now, what you're teaching, and I thought about this when I was calling you and researching you, is needed more than ever when you see what's going on. If you look at the news, every day you look at somebody being attacked, trying to cut a catalytic converter out of a car. Burglars are getting more bold.
Yes.
Because they're not getting arrested and put away for a long time. They're just rotated right out.
That's true.
So there's more and more victimization. So this is, I guess what we have to do is we can yell at these bureaucrats and saying, make the laws, but they're not going to.
No.
So what the society needs to do is like what Mark said, and what you say is, you need to put the time and effort in to take care of yourself, especially, I believe, if you're a parent, because part of your job is to take care of your kids and take care of your loved ones.
I think
Oh,
we're going to
yes.
see a spike in home invasions.
That too. That's
We
they're
never
getting more
had
and
that.
more
No
bold.
one ever thought somebody's
No.
going to kick my door in and hold my family at gunpoint and
Right.
rape and rob and steal and murder.
Oh, yes, exactly.
But
And more people are getting desperate because of sign of the times, and the punishment doesn't fit the crimes that they commit.
Right.
They'll kill someone. They're like, all right, well, you get
8
10 years in jail and you'll be out in 5.
Right.
To a criminal, they don't care. It's a walk in the park for them to deal that time, and they get out and they'll still do it. Yeah, and actually, let me read some statistics here for your audience.
okay.
Okay.
And again, I told you before, I'm always just astounded by the ignorance of people not wanting to accept these type of things that you see in the news, and
Reality.
it shouldn't be a hard sell, right? Everybody should be like, yes, that's it. I need to do that because that's an obligation. And before I get into that, a little quick caveat: if you didn't know how to swim, and you didn't have a life jacket, and you jumped in the ocean, what do you think that result's going to be?
Drown.
You're going to drown and die, right? Because you can't swim, right? So what do people do? They learn to swim, they wear a life jacket. Case of natural disasters, what do? You buy extra bottled waters, food, batteries, flashlights. Why? Because you want to be prepared for that, right? But they don't prepare themselves to protect themselves. Now, natural disaster, things like that, and Hurricane Katrina was an example too. During COVID, people will shoot you for your bottled water. In COVID, people were getting shot because they were hoarding toilet paper, and everybody wanted toilet paper, even though that had nothing to do with it, right? So
I never understood that
They're
one.
going to kill you for your supplies. So protection is the highest of priorities. If you're going to go out of your way to prepare for these types of scenarios, protection is always also going to be on that high list, right? Now, with these statistics, I just want to share with your audience, so for anyone listening that is naive, thinking, I live in a gated community, that'll never happen to me, I have a dog, and mainly just to pay this knowledge forward to women primarily. And then I'll explain a little bit more about this. And these are true. I Googled these. Anybody can Google these, all right? It's a great resource. Over 736 million women have been sexually assaulted. Over 600,000 people go missing every year in the United States. According to estimates, between 18,000 and 20,000 victims are trafficked in the United States every single year. Human trafficking is a $150 billion industry worldwide. And girls ages 12 to 17 are the most common victims of abduction. So those young girls are going to be trafficked, and again, it's a huge industry around the world, and they're on the black market being sold for hundreds and millions of dollars. And going back to the first statistics, now again, I'm going to read this so it sinks in. Over 736 million women have been sexually assaulted. Now, to give you some retrospect, The United States only has a little over 332 million people. This is twice the population of the United States. That many women globally have been victims of rape and sexual assault.